So the felon bombed Iran. What's next? Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for everybody who likes, watches, comments on the videos. If you've been promoting the channel on your social media, huge thank you. And if you've donated money through the super thanks, buy me a coffee, Venmo, it's greatly appreciated. Uh, I have set up a Patreon channel. Uh, for membership, it's listed, the link will be listed in this video, and it's also listed on the channel's page. I thought that might be a way for us to interact in a little bit of a different way, where you can suggest topics for us to read on, and we won't have to worry about the YouTube censorship of certain topics. We can probably talk a little bit more freely, um, and certainly won't get the dings for silly things like the nakedness on the cards. Um, so if you're interested in that, check that out. The channel's not going to change. This YouTube channel's not going to change any. On the Patreon channel in the future, I think there will be courses on how to read tarot, how to scry, things along those lines that I've been asked about in the past. Um, Along with special interest topics. It's kind of, it's going to be very member led. It's wherever membership takes it, that's where we'll go. Okay, so what's next? Will Israel increase its bombing of Iran? Will Iran increase its bombing of Israel? Will other countries get involved? Will the US bomb Iran again? And will there be any attacks on US soil? Let's look into all of those things. So let's first start with will Israel increase bombing? Now, I didn't really think that the felon would go through with bombing Iran. So we got that one wrong. Um, I am curious to see what the stories that come out about this are, on whether this was a last minute decision or whether this was premeditated. We move around our naval ships all the time, so that really didn't cause me much concern. But yeah, I'm just a little bit baffled by what the US gets out of this. But I think maybe we'll ask that question too. What's in it for the US? My feeling is nothing, but okay, so will Israel increase its bombings of Iran? What do we need to know about Israel bombing Iran? I always saw this as being kind of the status quo for a while. Until something big happened. Maybe this bombing's big by the United States. Don't think so though, but let's see. I mean, it's big, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's going to change the trajectory of things. Yeah, both sides are pretty dug in. The King of Wands, both sides think they're right. Um, there isn't much of an appetite for other countries to get involved, so that's good. Although the countries that I'm thinking of that might get involved probably aren't on those lists. I do think, the European Union and other countries will play a very tightrope walking on eggshells around what the United States did. Um, I don't think we'll see we might see some condemnations of it, but they'll be worded in ways about, maintaining global stability, things like that. The Six of Swords, moving away from the trouble. The Wheel of Fortune, everything's still in balance. It could go either way. We get the King of Swords at the center of the reading. This is good. Logic, consistency. Um, And then we get the truth coming out. I do think the truth is going to eventually come out about why Netanyahu chose to start this. of course, it'll be spun. It wouldn't be surprised me if the felon says Iran started it in the future because we live in this backwards world. Circles of support around money, so that's Israel, the United States, and not really sure the third country that makes a lot of sense here. Well, we'll see if we can't figure that out. Uh, if one plan doesn't work, try another. The Eight of Pentacles and wish fulfillment. So if Iran were to come out and say, hey, we're gonna surrender, so to speak, we're going to give up our nuclear program, which I don't think they're going to. Um, the rationale for having a nuclear program isn't what most people think. Um, it's been just a bunch of propaganda from the United States and Israel for years that it's confusing. So, but Israel, thinks they're right. Iran thinks they're right. Logic and consistency. This makes me think Israel's going to continue doing what they do until they get what they want. Whether they can get what they want is a different story. Uh, Israel does have the support of the United States, and that'll allow them to continue. And perhaps if, in some ways to prevent um, more deaths inside of Israel if the United States really gets involved. Um, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I think most of the world doesn't have an appetite for this at all. It's very much spinning the wheel of fortune. It could go either way. This might backfire on Israel as well. The truth I do think comes out, and if one plan doesn't work, they're going to try another. So, and this plan I think is really about just Netanyahu's own personal gain. It's very much as a crossroads for the world, and there's going to be a lot of erratic movement going forward. So, you know, expect, starts and stops to ceasefires, things like that, if they're announced. I wouldn't necessarily believe that that's the last of it. Okay, what about Iran? Iran? Is Iran going to continue bombing Israel, increase it, keep it about the same? It feels like Israel keeps theirs about the same. So this really felt like the golden type of generation for Iranian relationships, given the youth that's in the country and kind of the start to secularizing itself. And I think that's all out the window now. I think the United States, the felon and Netanyahu, they ruined all that. So I think, it's going to be tense relationships for probably 50 years, maybe more. It doesn't feel like there's going to be much progress made, whereas there could have been. I really felt like there could have been. Okay, if I ran increase. I don't think they're going to increase. Do you see the Five of Cups in the Scrying Bowl, which is about loss? Um, but it feels like a motivating loss, like they're just going to dig in deeper. Yeah, I mean, so we get the Queen of Swords, truth, consistency, logic, and we get stability in the environment around. So I think economic stability is the biggest obstacle. That would probably be the way this ends the quickest, is if Iran starts to experience a lot of economic uncertainty, which it certainly is going to. But if it gets to the point that there's possible regime change from inside the country. Now, if the outside tries to change things, it's not gonna, I don't think it'll work. We get the Sun card in the upper right. And they also have circles of support around money, the Three of Pentacles. So, I mean, I've always thought that, China, Russia, but Russia to a lesser extent, just because of how depleted it is, because of what it's doing in Ukraine, would have a way of funneling things uh, to Iran if they so decided to do that. Um, and since trade relations are kind of tense and there's, reason to think that they could get an upper hand one way or another by doing some really odd things, I don't think it's as crystal clear that Iran is isolated to me. Maybe they are, but we get sabotage with the Page of Swords. This makes me think that there might be some rebellions inside the country. We get the Seven of Cups, lots of different possible outcomes. I think a lot of the future isn't certain, and bombshells and surprises. With the Page of Cups, surprising new beginnings and being left out in the cold, poverty, loss. So, I think they're going to continue with the actions that they're doing. I think there's a potential for some sabotage from within, some jockeying for some powers. Iran's one of these countries that, really, I think, its populace really wants to be kind of secular, but that's not the way things are going at the current point in time. And it seems like there's going to be some economic setbacks, which makes sense. The bombshells and surprises concern me, and the spy inside the camp, and then the Sun card revealing the truth. I've always seen that there was going to start to be suicide bombers again in the Middle East. This goes back to like December when I did my 2025 predictions. And I just wonder if this doesn't spark one of these terrorist groups, not associated with the government of Iran directly, but maybe probably a proxy to Iran, um, to get involved. Uh, Definitely concerns about stability, but it feels like they have some support from the outside as well. A lot of illusionary and delusionary thinking that they're just going to roll over and give up. And we get surprising new beginnings. So to me, things kind of continue along the same route. Again, yeah, things just keep moving. It's chaotic movement. And really, the rest of the world doesn't really have that much of an appetite for even taking stances on this. So um, I don't see Israel or Iran escalating per se with themselves. So will the US bomb again? That's the next question. Will the US bomb? I don't think that this is going to go over as well as the felon thinks. US bomb again. I think this is going to be pretty widely condemned inside the United States. Outside of the United States, I think, it'll be walking on a little bit of eggshells to come up with a nice statement that makes it seem like they're not taking sides. Will the US again? Will there be more in the US? I think we should also ask if this is gonna escalate beyond the current geographic regions that it's contained within. Uh, so some sort of unlikely partnerships with the Lovers card. Well, we do have the voters in the environment around. Although I don't know how much the felon is paying attention to the voters. I do think other Republicans are and MAGA are paying attention to voters. Um, and again, there's no appetite whatsoever for this inside the United States, except for amongst a really small subset of war-hungry people. I think most MAGA is not for it either. We do get the High Priestess, so some things going on behind the scenes. And we get justice at the center, things balancing itself out. And we get the Five of Swords being wounded in battle. I don't think the felon is prepared for the size of protests that we're going to start to see and walking away from things that don't serve us. I don't think the Queen of Swords, the truth, logic, consistency, and the Six of Cups, the next generation. I think if the American citizens get their way, there won't be any more bombings. Now, that's not to say that they will. So I'm curious who convinced the felon to do this. His brain is such mush that I don't think it takes much to convince him. Ultimately, we get justice, things balancing out again and thinking about the next generation. So, and walking away from things that don't serve us. And I don't see how this serves the United States interests personally. We get justice, and then we get there's just not much of an appetite for this. Uh, the voters are very much paying attention. The sleeve's a wound for the felon in some sense. Like I think this is from MAGA itself. I don't think MAGA thought that they would do it. He would do it. Now, they'll make excuses for him. They'll say, oh, well, we didn't have all the information or whatever nonsense they'll come up with to justify the horrible things that he does. And then we get the Queen of Swords and things going on behind the scenes with the High Priestess and messages coming forward. So dark forces at work, but then we get temperance as well. So, I think if the US is going to bomb Iran again, it's maybe one more time and then it's done. I don't feel like it's going to be a consistent thing because it just it just doesn't feel that way to me. So what is in it for the felon in the US? What's the point here? What's in it for the United States? Is this just, I feel like this is just payment for Netanyahu refusing to sign a ceasefire before the election. That card really did pop out. Yeah, it's like a fiery new leadership, a new way of thinking. What's in it for the US? What does the United States gain by doing this? What's the United States gain by doing this? Okay. What does the United States gain by doing this? The temperance card, and we get the devil in the environment around. So I think the felon thinks that the US gains this idea of being peacekeeper, but the truth is it's just toxic. And Pakistan nominating the felon for the Nobel Peace Prize is fairly laughable on one hand, but on the second hand, the felon's too naive to realize that Pakistan's doing this to spite India because India says that the felon wasn't involved in any sort of negotiation to end the little tiff between Pakistan and India. Pakistan says he was. The truth is he wasn't. Um, so that's a sordid tale of it itself. You get the star card of protection down the upper right, so that's somewhat promising. Juggling money overseas influence. Yeah, I think this has to do with um, we get victory. I think this has to do with reshaping his image after the disastrous military parade and um, the horrible things that they're doing by kidnapping, you know, people off the street and kicking them out of the country, the human trafficking as well. And I think the felon felt very trapped, and this seemed like a way to try to break out of that cycle and also perhaps a way to make some money back at home by manufacturing some weapons. But yeah, I mean, to be seen as a peacekeeper, he thinks he's going to be victorious, and everyone's going to see him as nurturing and fostering the end to this conflict. I don't think it's going to play out that way. It's to distract from the human trafficking and the disastrous military parade. Uh, but I don't think that Americans are going to have that short of a memory when it comes to these things. The military parade was just a debacle, but the kidnapping and spending money when you're cutting money from other things, if in fact the budget bill passes, which I'm pretty sure it does, but it's going to be a while, like I said in the last reading. There's a lot of toxicity in the environment in the United States. The felon and others, including the citizens, feel very trapped. Citizens are very, empathetic, especially when it comes to people being shipped overseas and our money being sent to do that. So, and influence overseas conflicts. In reality, the United States is going to end up very isolated and very weary. And I do think it has something to do with money, the Ten of Pentacles, and then the Six of Pentacles, repayments of loans and debts. But it's ultimately the downfall. It turns out to be the downfall. The downfall for who? The Ten of Swords, and then we get the card for the felon. It's the down card, the downfall for the felon, and he just picks up more and more burdens to bear. So it doesn't work out the way he wants it to. So what's in it for the US? It's all about the felon. It really, nothing geopolitically is to the US's advantage, unless they want to continue to promote propaganda about exactly what's going on, which they probably will, but I don't think, Americans are so uneducated at this point, not our group, but, at this point, it wouldn't matter what's said, probably 80% of the country can't even find Israel or Iran on the globe. That would be my guess. Let alone know what all the bordering countries and how you could do a land route through China and Russia and Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan and get straight to Iran. I mean, nobody knows these things. So there's all sorts of things that could really go wrong here. I don't think they do, but they could. But will other countries get involved, particularly China? China get involved? Now, I don't think China will get involved directly, but they could be, supplying weapons in these back channel ways. And of course, if we have reasonable people in charge, we'd be able to track these things with satellites and know that that's what's going on, but I don't know that we do. The countries get involved? Just yes or no? Will other countries get involved? Or will this be just kept to the three? It's yes or no. Maybe. Yeah, Russia. No, I don't really think so. Not in a direct way, anyhow. If they do, it'll be very much behind the scenes. Possibly Russia, China, things behind the scenes, and but Iran's pretty much on their own, or Iran, Iran. Okay. Um, will there be attacks on U.S. soil? So this has been asked a few times of me. We'll see. I don't sense that. Now, a domestic terrorist attack is a different story, but like a terrorist attack from a foreign country, I just don't see that happening. Will there be any foreign-born terrorist attacks on the US? Just a yes or no. These three cards, foreign-born terrorist attacks. That's right. Let me get the full card. It circles the support around money and judgment. I don't think so. I think it'd be foolish. I don't know that there's enough support, and it would be harshly judged and condemned. And I think the US would really, especially if there was some state sponsor behind it, and even if there wasn't, the US, the felon will make one up just to cause chaos. So I don't think so. So I know these are scary times. Uh, Anxieties are high. Um, it does feel like things kind of stick to where things are, which is not an improvement. But like I said, you know, the solstice and around this time period is where things peak out at their worst and then things start to get better. So I still very firmly feel that. So, um, and yeah, if you're interested in joining the Patreon channel, would love to have you there. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon.